Okay, my theme is a little bit about from market insight to activation rather than to action, and to give you a little bit of a sense. I spent 24 years in Unilever, always in sales and marketing roles in various guises, and left the business in 2011, joining Keelings in early 2012. And a lot of the hard work had been done before I got to Keelings, because they had actually brought a brand to market. They had got some initial listings, and it was fledgling, but a lot of the heavy lifting had been done, and my job was then to take that on a little bit. So who are we, and where do we come from? This is a photograph of Keelings' strawberry patch. It's in about 1939 or so. It's in St. Margaret's, so it's just north of the airport. Eventually from runway 2 you'll get to see us all the time. The odd time when you come in from the airport you'll fly over something that feels a bit like Almeria. That's Keelings. We started in 1926 or so growing rhubarb, and that would have been with the man I work for is a man called David Keeling, and his grandfather would have started as a farmer in St. Margaret's, starting with rhubarb and moving on to strawberries. The history there says that unless I can make and sell a punnet for a day's wages, I won't have done a good job, because that's what Grandad managed to sell it for. A punnet of strawberries was approximately a day's wages. It was approximately a day's wages because the strawberry season lasted for about 4 weeks, somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks, and depended wholly on the weather. If we got hailstones, you didn't get strawberries, as you can see in a field like that. The business has developed, and the way the business developed was to move forward into, actually, instead of just growing, Joe Keeling, so David's dad, felt, actually, I think I can do a better job selling my produce than some of the people who are selling it. And he decided at the time to open a market in Dublin. And if you go into the centre in Little Green Street in Dublin, the market is still there. But that's where he started. And from that, he proceeded into understanding, you know what, if I don't do something with the multiples and try to supply the multiples and not just a wholesaler in veg, I'm probably not going to be in existence. And he grew his business on the back of Quinsworth and then Tesco as an own label service provider into those people. And he travelled the world bringing fruit from all parts of the world, following the sun, and developed his business in that way. As David re-entered the business, always growing, by the way, always growing in St. Margaret's, but as David re-entered the business, he actually felt long-term, unless we have an extremely significant and solid Irish growing base, actually there's no difference between us and anybody else in terms of a fruit consolidator. And so there's an awful lot of money has subsequently been invested over the last 10 to 15 years back in the farm. And just to give you a sense of that, this is a photograph from underneath the strawberries in our heated glasshouse. This particular glasshouse is a 5-hectare glasshouse. So when we fill it with strawberries, we buy 550,000 strawberry plants and plant them twice a year into that particular glasshouse. What you're seeing is underneath it, so it's a state of the art, it's a heated glasshouse. All of those runs are designed in such a way that they're about 1 metre off the ground, so you can pick from underneath the strawberries pretty quickly and pretty easily. We can now bring you strawberries pretty much 9 months of the year. So this year, for the last couple of years, we've managed to bring Irish strawberries just before St. Patrick's Day. Starts small, so if I was to show you a growing curve, it looks something like that. But we start in our heated glasshouse. We move then to a cold glasshouse, which is an older glasshouse, not heated, lower, and looks more traditional, like the one might have been in your grandfather's garden. And then we go into tunnels. Every single thing we grow today is under tunnels. Nothing is exposed to the weather in its entirety. And everything we grow in pots or out of the ground, so that we can hydroscopically feed it, we can nourish it in the way in which it wants, we can close down to protect it from rain and etc. And if we have a hailstorm, we're still going to have strawberries. But pretty much we can bring you strawberries from about the middle of March to about the middle of December, thereabouts. So that season has been extended. We could pretty much grow strawberries 12 months a year if we had the weather. It's a very simple thing. If you had the heat and if you had the light, you could grow it all the time. So if you wanted to join me on a trip to California, pretty much you can grow strawberries all year long, 12 months of a year. And so what we do is just try to create the conditions that allow them to grow. So, to give you a little bit of insight about where does our insight come from and why do we do what we do. The business got a little bit of a scare in about 2008, 2009. Not a lot different than most businesses got quite a big scare in 2008, 2009. And it lost quite an amount of business. And it realized at the time that having been in business now for 3 generations, actually the business is wholly and entirely dependent on whether or not we win the next contract with somebody for the next 6 or 8 months. And it felt surely that is, we should have more to show for being in business for that length of time and for growing for that length of time and for having that expertise. So we started our qualitative research in 2009. And out of that, it became extremely obvious that consumers were very interested in understanding where their food came from, in supporting an Irish grower, in wanting that quality and in wanting that reassurance of a family and the linkage behind that, and more than just an own label product and what that might do for them. We've continued that qualitative journey, so we've done a lot of research in 2009, 2010, 12, 13, 15, mainly with groups, sometimes backed up by some qualitative research or quantitative research to understand the maths behind some of those things. We buy a little bit of Nielsen, we buy a little bit of Kantar, and we've just recently invested in dunnhumby just to try to get in behind what are consumers doing and what else are they putting in a basket alongside it. And we didn't really know that as well as we should have, so we've invested in that. I personally put a lot of stall into some of the trends that we see, that all of us can pop onto Google and figure out what trends are there in the marketplace. And they're quite truthful, and I'll go through 1 or 2 of those, and some of them that we've used quite carefully. And we've done a lot of work alongside Board Bia. So in the initial stages of our research and in the initial stages of trying to find somebody who might help us shape a brand and trying to find somebody who might help us activate that brand, we've used Board Bia partners. And then we've got a lot of insight and information internally in terms of our own sales and what customers say back to us and what consumers say back to us. Just 2 areas that I wanted to talk about that I thought might interest you. Sources of insight, Board Bia's own consumer lifestyle trends. And if I go through these in terms of what they mean to us, busy lives, help me manage my busy life. Well, actually, berries more than anything else are the single most convenient fruit you can buy. If I was to put out on a table all of the fruits that were available to you, you would see that berries go first. Then the next most easy to peel, which is probably a banana. Then the next most easy, which is an easy peeler. And slowly but surely, we'd get our way towards an orange. You know, it's about convenience, and it's about helping the busyness of people's lives. They want it quick and fast. Shared experiences, I want to get more enjoyment out of simple things. It's very interesting when we talk to people about strawberries and the stories they tell relating to those strawberries. It's very interesting where people's minds go. They talk about childhood experiences. They talk about everything from the fun they had all the way to sex related to a strawberry. It's quite interesting. Whereas actually when you talk about a blueberry, somebody says, yeah, it's good for you and it's healthy and I need to eat them. But strawberries are quite ephemeral. People talk about them in a very interesting way. So we think we've got something that we can share experiences with. Responsible living, well, it's grown here. The vast majority of what we do is grown here, and it's good for you. So it helps people make better choices. So again, I think some of the reason for our success is about people and trends, not just what have we done in terms of our branding. Health and well-being, well, we're right smack in the middle of that trend, and everything in fruit is growing. Absolutely everything is growing a little bit at the moment. Personal value seekers, we've learned, 2 for 5 seems to be the thing that clicks people into berries and has brought it from a particular penetration level to a different one. And then keeping it real. I think that's one of the things I really like about dealing and working in Keelings. When I left Unilever, people asked me, what would you like to do? And I guess the single big thing I used to say out loud, and I didn't know where it was coming from, was I'd like to work for somebody I can see. And I work for somebody I can see. And if I want to do something, we might go in and talk to David, and then we do it. And it's as quick as that sort of thing. And if we want to change the label, we can probably think about that on Tuesday and do it on Sunday if we really put our minds to it. But this thing about keeping it real, the brand is real. It comes from a real place and people identify with it and they like it. People smile when they think about that particular brand. This is one I thought was a very interesting one, and I won't labour the chart quite as interesting, but it's 12 key trends in business of food, nutrition and health, and I'll read them out to you. Naturally functional. There's a trend of an upward trend on things being naturally functional, and we're very smack in it. Dairy and the resurgence of dairy and the resurgence of naturalness. Protein is definitely happening. We're all talking about it, and we're bringing fruit and probably some protein with us, and protein bars. There isn't a single company in the country that isn't doing something with protein at the moment. Energy and managing your energy. Weight and wellness. Snacking. Slow energy is talked about a lot. Sugar, the negative connotations of sugar, which I think fruit is one of those ones that doesn't bring you any of those negative connotations because it brings it to you in a form that's right for the body. Permission to indulge. Free from. Seniors, making sure that they're getting the right products and into their bodies. And finally, kids' nutrition. And if I sort of circle around all of those, there's 12 things on the screen. We're pretty good on about 10 of the 12. So it's not surprising that the product is beginning to do well. But just two sources of insight to give you a sense of what we're doing. Our view on fresh produce, because as John said, nobody thinks that anybody could brand fresh produce. I actually think that that's one of the problems of fresh produce. I worked for 24 years in Unilever, and I never thought about fresh produce, ever. I walked into a shop and walked straight by it, and I did every other aisle, as you can imagine, in Unilever, but I never thought about fresh produce. Fresh produce in Ireland is worth 1.2 billion euro. It's pretty damn big. And if you're in Tesco or you're in Dunn's or you're in Musgrave, you think about fresh produce all the time because it's hugely important. Fresh produce is one of, out of the top 10 reasons why you select a shop, fresh produce, its quality, its merchandising, its price is 5 of the reasons why you select that shop. It's pretty damned important. The interesting thing about fresh produce and why the Twix bar is there is currently more money spent on marketing Twix in Europe than the whole of fresh produce put together. How's about that? Isn't that just the most extraordinary thing? It's exceptionally good for you. It's what you should eat more of and more of and more of. 5 a day, we should be eating 10 a day. But nobody tells us why, what, how to use, how to fix, all those things. But actually, when you're sitting watching the television tonight, just count up the number of products that you're watching that are not good for you, that have been advertised. It's really, really interesting. I find that the most interesting thing. And I think there's a massive opportunity for brands and own label in fresh produce because I think together, and only together, you'll drive those categories to a place that we didn't think was possible. So that's our view. What came out of our research back in 2009 is that there is a fundamental belief in consumers' minds, and maybe it's only in this country. I think it probably exists in every other country too. But I want to know who the grower is. I want to identify with them. I want to know what their place looks like. I want to know their family history. I want to know all of that. And it was very, very clear in what we did. When we launched that product, and it was literally only Keelings strawberries in 2010, getting support from Tesco, and only Tesco in 2010, we close to doubled their strawberry sales in that year. Close to doubled their strawberry sales in that year, from sort of flat the previous year. So it works. Has that proved a case? No, it hasn't, by the way. Absolutely no, it hasn't. Because ultimately, as a retailer, the retailer still believes in their heart of hearts, and maybe I would if I was a retailer, that actually it should be own label. So it's that we haven't won that battle by any manner of means. There's a long way to go in that conversation. And it can only be proved maybe when we do that to the next category or the next category after that. But definitely, our insight was very clear. There's room for this brand. So, the brand vision is to win consumers and customers long-term loyalty for the Keelings brand. And I separate those two things, consumers being you and me at home, and customers being Tesco, Dunn's and Musgrave and all the people who have a say into whether or not you should be on their shelves. And so those two go hand in hand. You can't win one without the other, and I think that's a long-term piece that we still have to do and still have to continue to convince. By consistently delivering great quality produce, because it's founded on it being superb quality produce, and we put a lot of time and attention into that quality. I'll talk a little bit more about that. By bringing some insightful innovation, and by pretty decent, impactful marketing campaigns. And it's, nothing. It'll be nothing without quality, it will be nothing without innovation, and it will be nothing without impactful marketing campaigns. It's about doing all three. So that's sort of our vision. Our brand promise, growing is in our nature. And by the way, it is. We say Keelings love to grow. And if I introduced you to David or introduced you to Joe, we'd cover a lot of subjects together. You could cover a lot of subjects with them. But the subject that you get to, that you realize, oh my God, they love to grow, is growing. And so when you get to that subject, you understand who they are. And they're authentically those people. So growing is in our nature. We believe it's the best way to assure top quality produce. And actually, then as we follow the sun around the world, when we can't grow it ourselves, we like to deal with people who work to our growing standards. And actually, when you get into fresh produce and you get deep into it, you realize it's just full of families all over the world. Now, one particular family might have 5,000 hectares in Chile, but they're still a family. And it's a very interesting business. It's predominantly owned by families, partly because no PLC would ever do it, because it's going to rain and they're going to lose the crop, and who would put their money in that PLC? So it still remains with families to a great degree. Our core values are more about it's not just the core values of what we want the brand to be, but it's actually, we just sat down to say, what are the core values of the Keelings family? And they're all about honesty. They're very down-to-earth people. They're very charming and very nice people. They're very knowledgeable, friendly, very proud of our heritage. I've made the word passionate red, because that's how it feels sometimes, because they are so ambitious about where they might be able to take this business to. Real passion about particularly the quality of the produce that they produce, and they are extremely approachable people. So we've just sort of taken that, and that's what our brand is trying to be. Quality is crucial. We work alongside one of the single biggest berry producers in the world, who are renowned for their research and trials, and we have exclusivity to the use of their varieties for the island of Ireland. And then we do quite an amount of our own research. So we have about 70 trial varieties on trial at any point in time. Producing berries, before you get involved in it, you think a strawberry is a strawberry, but if I brought you out to Keelings and we started to taste them, you'd realize a strawberry isn't a strawberry. That's an okay strawberry. Now this is a superb strawberry, etc., etc. And so we do a lot of work to make sure that that's right, and we do that right across the variety set. So we like to think that the vast majority of the time we manage to get you better quality in the Keelings brand, and that is what's crucial for our business. Our target audience is Niamh. She's 36 years old. Is Niamh, where are you, Niamh? She's Niamh. She's 36. She's a new mum. And actually, when we link that to what people buy and where the vast majority of berries, particularly berries, are sold, they tend to be sold in this sector. One would think that it actually might be people who are slightly older and have more money and are taking care of themselves. But actually, there's still a lot of people in that category who are saying, well, I buy berries for the grandkids when they're coming, or for my son when he comes, as my mother does. So that is our target audience, and that's what we try to focus what we do. That's sort of a little bit of what the range looks like today, and it's more around the innovations that we've brought to the range. So it isn't just strawberries, blackberries, blueberries and raspberries. It's been extended into mixed berries, and we also have some Bramley apples and some eating apples, which are more seasonal. Okay, I'm nearly there. How did we do it? So how do we activate it? There's 4 things we do, only 4. Or they circle around these 4. If you read the average marketing book, you'd probably write these down having read it. So they're quite simple. We're going to focus on building brand awareness and preference. We're going to drive penetration and consumption. We're going to launch new products and innovation. And we're going to drive our distribution. And it sounds a bit odd, but as you sit down to write the strategy, I tried to I'd like our team to have the freedom to operate in those zones and do things that you know are going to do one of those 4 things. And that's where we're trying to focus. So that's where all the focus has been, and I'll show you some of that as we go. Campaigns have been quite tactical, very store-driven at the start. Everything we've done, we've tried to generate a return on investment in the period in which we do it. And did it work? And if it worked, then we'll do more. I've spent 24 years in marketing of various kinds in Unilever, but I've never done return on investment quite as tight as I've had to do for this, because margins are extremely tight. And if you're going to spend some money on a marketing activity, it better deliver you a return. So a lot of what we've done has been highly tactical, focused on the store itself, focused on giving consumers a bit of an experience, and building our brand, partly because people got a book of fruit from us first time out, and then they got a nice water bottle from us, and then they got a chopping board from us, and later they've gotten a lunchbox. But actually these things sit in your home and they change your opinion about who are Keelings, and I think it has done a lot for our levels of awareness. This year, our year starts on the 1st of December, so Christmas is the start of our year. This year we've done a Christmas platter, a little Christmas tree, which people have used and gifted, brought as gifts. We've come on into January, and for the 4th year running, we've done a thing called January, and we've licensed we've trademarked that name, January. We've tried to do different activities each January to drive the category as a whole. In its 4th year, that has given, we generated 46% growth this January for the category of berries. The category of berries, not just for the brand, but for the category of berries. And ultimately, I think that's what we have to do. Toward the end of January, you know, when they talk about Blue Monday, we did quite a lot of activity with blueberries at the time. We've relaunched our snack pot range in February. We've just completed our May campaign, which is a free lunchbox with every 2 punnets of berries. We'll go into a Heritage Island piece, which is, you know, it's sort of keeping it real and shared experiences and all those things. So this is indelibly Irish. There's about 35 sites all around Ireland which belong to Heritage Island, and we offer you free in a punnet of Keelings 2-for-1 places, or kids go free places. So it's quite a nice thing and very close to us. And then again in September we'll do something with apples. So we're doing quite tactical pieces as we've done, and each one is delivered and each one has been measured very, very tightly to give us a return. Just a couple of words about our website. We've updated the website as the time has gone on, and we've also put a lot of time and effort into Facebook. So this is our Facebook campaign, features any one of those 7 items. So in terms of strategy, you have a Facebook we are on Facebook, but this is how we are approaching consumers, through one of these things. So either we feature a promotion, either we do a grower of the week, what's happening with our growers, something about happy and healthy, something about did you know, Keelings and you, something about a cook's corner, and we'll just rotate those 7 items and keep talking about them. And so far, that's 2015 activity. By the end of 2015, we'd gone to 50,000 likes. We're at 57,500 now, and getting a lot more engagement this year because we've adjusted some of the ways in which we're talking to people, focusing a lot about what's happening on the farm. Now, the last thing I wanted to say is go back to the objectives, the key objectives, and I'm sorry for those of you with the sun in your eyes. Build awareness and preference. This is what we've done. So using, this is the board BA brand health check results. So our brand awareness prompted has gone from 53 to 86 across 5 years. Our unprompted awareness, which I was a bit worried about last year in 2015 because it dropped slightly, has gone to 51. Our net promoter score has gone to 56. I sort of like the net promoter score. Does everybody know what the net promoter score is? So all the people who say bad things about you say 0, and all the people who say good things about you say 10. The net promoter score, which is quite severe, that score, says the people who say 9 and 10 minus the people who say 1 to 6. Only the people who've said quite positive things about you, 7 and 8, are left out of that calculation. So we've got a very positive score at the moment. We're third in Ireland out of 356 brands that were audited by Board BIA last year in terms of net promoter score, which is very positive. So I'd like to think we're doing okay in terms of awareness and preference. In terms of driving penetration and consumption, well, I'll come down here to the penetration numbers. Penetration of berries in 2011 was 77%, it's now at 85%. And consumption in kilos has gone from 7,656 to 12,745, which is 66% uplift in what's happening in penetration and consumption. And we've driven that through these promotions. So each time we've done promotions, we've driven the growth of the brand itself by greater than 100% in the period that that's happened, and we've tended to hold on to customers at the end of those periods. New products and innovation, just to give you a sense of it, the mixed berry range, which is just simple things like a mix of blueberries and raspberries, which suit people who either live alone or just want something for their porridge in the morning, which is a bit of both. That is now worth over €3 million. Snack pots at the end of their second year were worth €1 million, but since we've relaunched in February, we're now beating last year by about 4 times since February. So that number will change. And this little strawberry tray, why we did it, the one at the top here, is berries is a very interesting business. On a Monday, the team who manage the farm come in and tell you that we're going to be short strawberries this week, and you might need to talk to other people to buy more or to find some from Holland, or everybody in Ireland is short. And on a Thursday, because the sun is shone for 2 days, people come in and say, we've 30 tons more than we have planned to sell. What would you like to do? And we need to move them by Friday. And that's, now I was Unilever, so we planned things out months and months and months. So to hit that, I sort of felt, God. Anyway, this is called our flush pack. So when we have 20 tons of fruit that we need to sell, we've developed a 1 kilo punnet that literally out it goes. And we've designed it in such a way that it hits a store on a Friday, and we can put 400 of these on a pallet in a Tesco on a Friday morning, and by Friday afternoon they're gone. And it hasn't upset the sales of the rest of the range, because people look at them and they go, oh my God, a barbecue, whatever, and they take 2 and 3, and people say things like, where did you get those? I want one of those. So it's just something that we use as a temporary measure when we have issues. And finally, distribution. Well, the distribution has gone from sort of a weighted distribution of about 26% to now at about 76% of the market in that time. So that's sort of how we measure ourselves. And the last one for me is this one. I've essentially graphed what Kantar tell us all of the fruit markets are worth, and I've mapped it, and it's done in value. So obviously there has been deflation over the years in these categories. But essentially what it's saying pretty much is that everything is pretty static over a 6-year period, except berries, which has grown by 87% in that period, which happens to coincide with when we started the brand. So my view remains, I believe, if we really, really want to do what we could do, then we need both brands and own label to really drive fresh fruit and veg to where they could be. I'm done. Thanks.